Hey, happy Halloween, Russ and DJ. Month of November, and boy, it's going to be a fun run this month. Missouri coming up first. That's Saturday at 3:40, and we'll have that on the air for you starting at 11:30 a.m. for our coverage of Georgia football on the Bulldog Sports Network. Glad to see you guys again. Happy Halloween, belated. How much did you guys get into your kids' candy already?
I've gotten into it already. But the,
Well,
the, only, the only the only ones I've gotten into are the ones where they had the full size candy bars. I got a couple full size Twixes, got a baby Ruth, so I took them on out for them.
nah, back in my fat boy days, I would have been demolishing. This is new and improved Russ, trying not to be fat forever. So, I snuck in a Reese cup last night, and I'm actually, believe it or not, this is controversial, but I'm a Butterfinger man. I think Butterfinger is the best candy bar there is. So, had one Reese, one Butterfinger.
That's a negative. No,
I'm with you on that. I like those a lot.
Butterfinger is like out of the top five. No way.
No,
The reason I
you're
asked
losing
that
you're
is
losing credibility, Shock. I'm a lot
the reason
heavier
I
than
asked that is
Butterfinger.
to lead into this next question. How is Georgia going to take Missouri's candy this week? And they got a lot of
Ooh.
candy. They got Cook and they got Schrader and they got Burden and they got Cooper, and that's just on offense. They got a lot of candy, and Georgia's going to have to take it at home this week. How do the Dogs do that?
Well, I think first off, I think Russ should go back into his car like he did last week because when
Yeah,
Russ
that
was
was good
riding his
karma.
car down in South Georgia, the Dogs played really, really well. So maybe that's an indication of what Russ needs to get doing. Forgetting about our meets. But you know what? I think this is going to be an exciting game, man. I think this is one of those type of ball games where it's going to be physical. As we remember last year, this was a crazy game down in Missouri. They had us on the ropes. They were physical up front. They did a good job of changing the line of scrimmage. I know they got the Stetson a few times. They made us really uncomfortable. And I think that only gives them confidence going into this season, plus where they played. And obviously, their only loss is the shootout to LSU. But I think this is a Missouri team that is just as talented as a lot of teams around the country. I think they may be a more talented team than we probably played all year with what you just talked about on offense. And then defensively, you just listen to Kirby talk about it, and he just talks about how aggressive they are, how they get after people. I mean, it's going to be an interesting ball game, but I think the Dogs have done everything they've wanted to do, especially this season in certain moments to let you know that, hey, it don't matter who the opponent is. These dudes can get it done versus anybody, I believe.
Yeah, and I think that this Georgia team has shown that they're going to play to the level of their competition for better or for worse this year. We've struggled against some teams we were supposed to roll, but man, when Kentucky came to town or came knocking, and then we went down to Jacksonville to see the Gators, and a little bit of chatter started coming out from the media, from the fan base about this team. It's not the same as it was. Golly, did they look good this past weekend? So, I think that Georgia's going to rise to the occasion with Missouri. I feel like they finally figured it out a little bit on defense. We had more sacks in that game than we had just about all year long. Made Mertz look very uncomfortable in the pocket, and that's going to be the situation with Missouri. Missouri's offense is very good. Cook, to Luther Burden, like Luther Burden is a dude. I mean, he's a guy that Georgia wanted. He's probably one of the only 3 or 4 on that roster at Missouri that Georgia would trade and put on their roster. But they wanted Burden bad, and you see why. Like, he has been a stud coming out of the slot for them this year. So, I mean, the formula for the Dogs is going to be you got to hit Connor Cook. You can't let him sit there and look for Luther Burden and his other tools, going down the field. And then on offense, we finally started finding a little bit of our identity over that there. The running game looked good. Tate Ratledge was moving people. Xavier Truss was back in the game moving people. Ernest Green, I don't know how the rest of his game looked, but golly, he murdered that cornerback from Florida out there on that little screen. So we actually ran the ball with authority, and man, Carson Beck, that's the best that cat has looked in the pocket all year long. He was money. Ladd McConkey's his guy. He spread the ball around. He was throwing ropes all over the place. I mean, you finally feel like this team found a little bit of identity. Throw the ball, spread the ball around to your weapons, and then be able to run it right down the middle of a defense. And when Georgia does that, they're hard to beat.
Are you guys ever surprised by the efficiency of Georgia week to week? Russ, you kind of said we play to our level of competition, good or bad, but man, last week, when we had to rise to the occasion, Georgia really did. Does any of that ever surprise you anymore after 25 straight wins?
It would surprise me if this Georgia team did not respond. I didn't get to see the game live. We had a 11-year-old playoff football game up in Jackson County that kicked off at 4:30. So I was watching on my phone, sitting here, on the sideline before our kickoff, and I saw Florida get the ball and go down the field and score. And then you're like, man, all right, sometimes that happens. They got a little wrinkle on the opening drive that hits you, and you want to see how the team responds. And Georgia got 10 points in a hurry. And as soon as that happened, and Florida, the worst fourth down call probably in the history of college football, with that fake doodle, under the leg, double snap pass, whatever it was. Once that happened and they didn't convert, you felt like that snowball started rolling downhill, and there was nothing the Gators could do to stop it. This Georgia team is so talented. When they get rolling, they're really, really hard to stop.
Shock, any of that stuff ever surprise you?
You know what? I think so, because I mean, you mentioned it, 25 straight is crazy. I mean, to win 25 straight games in this league versus anybody, I think it's hard to do. And these Dogs continue to show up every single week and play to a level that, everybody, I think, still is surprised. And I think even this year, when everybody's comparing this team to the last two seasons, and this team's had a lot of, people on their back, and a lot of people, not really buying into who they are. And then obviously they come out and play the way they have. I think it's been good. I mean, Carson's had to deal with a lot this season. I mean, he's had to put a lot on his shoulders coming from what happened the last 2 years, and nobody wants to drop off. That's a lot of pressure on the dude. I've been there. I know what it's like to say, all right, it's finally your team, and now people are expecting certain things out of you, and you got to kind of harness that. And I thought he's done a great job of being that guy for this team. But yeah, it is kind of shocking that week in and week out, Kirby continues to get these guys to play at a high level. And I get a chance to be in there pregame, while they're warming up, halftime, all that kind of stuff. And he's got an outstanding staff. I mean, I think that goes, sometimes you forget about it when Kirby's, front and center all the time. But his staff, man, every single ball game, you can see every single coach going through the details of every single thing that they have going on. And they coach them hard. They're all smart dudes, and it's just fun to watch them go through their process every single week. And you can see why they're locked in and focused, because they got coaches that don't allow them to stray anywhere but about the moment.
Really good defensive performance last week against Florida. Who is emerging in your opinions? Who's emerging on defense to bring our defense to a next level?
Scott, I think it's been a group effort, to be honest, man. I think we've seen different cast of characters make plays every single week. Obviously, Mike Hill's been a guy who's been a part of the fray every week. I mean, we saw Tyron Dawkins get that strip out last weekend. And I remember going into halftime talking to Kirby and telling him they got 2 balls out, and he was looking at me all excited and smiling because they got the ball out. But I think it's been a cast of characters, man. I think the 2 in the middle have been outstanding, man. I think Pop and Smile, every time we look up, I feel like you're calling one of those guys' name because they're around the football, they're making a play. Javon has been all over the field. Ty Key has been unbelievable in coverage, man. In the era of anytime you get close to a receiver, they call a PI. This dude has been locking them down from that slot position and playing ball. And Kamari, I know he had a big play last week versus Florida. They don't go against him a lot. So I think it's a group effort. I mentioned a couple guys there, but it's been fun to watch all these guys collectively go hunt.
Yeah, I've got an answer that's a lot more succinct than Shock and probably more correct. The answer is Jalen Walker, number 11. I mean, that dude started lining up on the outside. He's got a little bit of a twitch off the edge that Georgia doesn't have out of their other guys. And, man, he started this week coming off the edge and causing problems for that Florida defensive line and opened it up for Ingram Dawkins and opened it up for Mike Hill a little bit. When you get a guy that is that fast off the edge and comes in with a little bit of a reckless abandon, which Jalen does, it makes the defense shift what they're doing a little bit. So Shock's answer is right. I'll just give him a hard time because he knows that he's not as right as I am in most things, just like the candy argument minutes ago.
Scott, you saw that. You saw. I didn't give him no facial reaction because I knew he was trying to poke at me.
But yeah, I mean, Taki Smith, Pop, Smile, they've been playing great. But the guy that stood out to me this past weekend specifically was Jalen Walker. I mean, he was a disruptor off the edge, that defensive front that we haven't had most of the year.
Does that, to follow up on that, does that continue the rest of the year, or is it going to be a game-by-game situation where things change up as far as defensive looks?
So blocking scheme has a lot to do with that and what the offense is trying to do. Are they a drop-back team that's trying to do some man protection type stuff that gives you one-on-one situations? Or are they going to be a dink and dunk, get the ball out quick and make it hard to get to the quarterback type situation? So if Connor Cook stands in the pocket this week and they try to get 4 or 5 receivers out in the route, Georgia's going to pressure them again. I feel like they finally figured it out a little bit. So, I think that's going to be a lot to do with Missouri. Sacks aren't always on the defense. Lack of sacks doesn't necessarily mean your defense isn't doing their job. Sometimes the offensive scheme dictates that with quick passes, short throws, etc. But I think Missouri to win is going to have to stretch the ball down the field. They're going to have some explosive plays, try to get chunk yardage. And when they do that, it takes time, 1002, 1003, 1004. And when you do that, these guys against Georgia, it seems like they're starting to figure it out a little bit.
Scott, there's 2 categories that I think that makes this team so special. And it speaks to the point that Russ talking about with these guys being able to get to the quarterback and, determines what kind of style of play they're playing against. But Georgia's defense is number 1 in the country on 3rd down. So that tells you 1st and 2nd down, they're clogging lanes. They're not allowing, much yardage on 1st and 2nd down. And 3rd down, they are getting off the field. And you look at some of the guys on that defense, you say, wow, those dudes find a way to get dudes off the field. Then on the other side of the ball, you're 3rd in the country on 3rd down and converting 3rd down. So it tells you one part of your offense is moving the football and putting pressure on you. And then your defense is turning people over and giving the ball back. I think that's what's making this team so good right now is they are really good in those critical situations.
Was watching some of Missouri's game against South Carolina. They were off last week while we were playing Florida. So they've had 2 weeks to prepare for this. I think Cody Schrader may have been the only running back to touch the football on that day. And he had a pretty solid day, not bad for a former Division II walk-on. And then Brady Cook their quarterback gets into the running game as well. How does that bode for Georgia's defense? What does Georgia do to a team that has basically they don't use committee, or they didn't in that game at running back, but they factor in the quarterback run?
It's huge. And I think when you go back to the Auburn game, when they had nothing but the run game with the QB run, it was a little bit tougher because you had to account for it in ways that you usually don't. Now you have a solid run game in Schrader, who's averaged over 5 yards. He's just got 9 touchdowns already, 9. And you talk about his efficiency. Then you talk about Brady Cook and his efficiency. I mean, he's completing 69, 70% of his passes. I think he's got like 3 interceptions on the year. And that tells you he's taking care of the football. The ball's coming out quickly. And he's getting it to dudes like Luther Burden, who is top 5 in the country right now in yards and catches. So they have it in all 3 areas, which makes it even tougher. And then you mentioned the part about where you say you got a quarterback that can run to. That's what makes you so hard to defend, because you got a quarterback that can move. He's efficient with the football, but also you got a running back who's like a 5'9" bowling ball coming through there who's wrecking shop. And then you got his receivers on the outside. So it keeps you honest. This is going to be an interesting matchup because there's so many ways that Missouri can go about beating you. And you think back to Kentucky, where all you thought about was the physicality. They're going to run it at you. They're going to pound it at you. And you weren't really concerned too much about them throwing the football. Well, I think this is a different animal in Missouri, where you have both facets of the game that you absolutely got to worry about.
I know that I appreciate you guys not correcting me when I said Connor Cook a while ago. I just realized I said Connor Cook. I don't even know who that is.
That's his lesser-known brother.
Yeah,
that's the guy. He used to play quarterback at Michigan State.
Yeah, there you go. Appreciate you, man. Shot. I don't keep up with the quarterbacks. I'm not worried about them as much. Yeah, I mean, I think the running quarterback situation, when you look back at Kirby's history of running defenses, and I think it's an easy thing to say about these mobile quarterbacks that giving him problems. They like to point out Johnny Manziel. Well, guess what? Johnny Manziel is one of the greatest college quarterbacks we've ever seen. I mean, there weren't many dudes like Johnny football playing. But what it does is this whole conversation we talk about balance. And we said last week going to the Florida game, Kirby and his defense, his staff, they've done an exceptional job of taking away something that the offense wants to do. Florida wants to run the ball. They took that away really quickly. They shut ETN down. He didn't really sniff anything positive, it seemed like, for most of the game. Kentucky, they shut down Ray running the ball after he gashed the Kentucky back after he gashed Florida. So Georgia shut down one aspect of an offense most of the year. You come into a different animal with Missouri. Missouri, like we said, Brady Cook, not Connor, has been super efficient. Luther Burden is in the Biletnikoff conversation this year. And now that they've got a running game that's just a positive running game. You don't have to be Reggie Bush killing people for the Heisman. But if you're averaging 4, 5, 6 yards a clip and making the defense respect that, it opens up lanes. It makes it easier for the offensive line to protect. It just makes it harder as a whole to stop what they're trying to do. Because Drinkwitz has done a great job. Their team is balanced. Their team is physical. Their team is a lot of things we talked about this Georgia team being several years ago under Kirby when they were building the program the way that we now see it to be. And that's a dangerous thing for a team like Georgia. Missouri is talented enough to beat us. They're disciplined and they're balanced. They're a really good football team.
And Russ, that line of scrimmage is good too for them, especially defensively. They have they get to the quarterback a lot. I think they have 24, 25 sacks this year. They've got size up on that line of scrimmage, and they got attitude too, at least watching some of their games. Tell me about that matchup for us.
Georgia's not going to play anybody all year long that's more talented than we are with our O-line versus their D-line. We've got NFL prospects at all 5 positions on the offensive line. And last week against Florida, it finally looked like that a little bit. We moved people out of the way. Protection-wise, we've been exceptional all year long. I don't remember Carson Beck getting hit. I know he's been sacked a few times, but I don't remember him getting hit or sacked in big moments. It just hasn't stuck out there. So, you got to watch these guys again. Ernest Green, last week, if you look at some of these advanced metric stuff, he was not great in pass protection. We look at his grades. Now, he made up for it with some physical plays in the run game. We all saw the whammy against the corner on the screen we mentioned earlier. But he's got to step up on the blind side and do a really good job, not let Missouri come off the edge. Because Shock can tell you, it only takes once or twice for that quarterback to get ear hole before he starts hearing footsteps coming. And all of a sudden, you're a very different quarterback if you're a pocket guy.
Yeah. And Russ, he's only been sacked 6 times all year. I tell you how great this offensive line is and how well they've been, moving people. And here's another thing. I went back and looked at it. For the last 3 games, Georgia has rushed for over 170 yards in those 3 games. I had a chance to ask Seb Bear praying about it this week, and he was mad. He was like, we should be at 200. And that just tells you the mindset that I know he has and the rest of that offensive line has is they want to maul people. They want to be the more physical team up front. Everybody talked about that offensive line coming into this offseason of being, hey, they're going to be up there trying to win that Joe Moore Award. So it's going to be really, really fun to watch this group go against Missouri this week, especially with what happened last year, because a lot of these guys are back. Similar guys who played last year are going to be back playing against this Georgia offensive line again, and they probably felt like they had their way with Georgia's offensive line last year. So it's going to be a fun matchup and definitely something we got to look for. But, Russ, the other thing you talked about was balance. Right now, Georgia's averaging 36 attempts a game throwing the football and 34 rushing. That tells you all the balance that you want, that you need, and they're doing a great job. It looks like we're throwing it a lot, but we're also being able to run the rock when we need to.
You are about him. He's not an outspoken guy. I want to know what the reaction is from the rest of his teammates about the way this guy plays.
They love him. I'll be honest. Every time he comes off or every time he scores a touchdown, they love him. Everybody's always talking to him, dapping him up. I mean, because I think he's kind of quiet, but he goes about his business in a way where he just takes care of it. Like, you look up and, oh, man, Dejon's got 96 yards already in this ball game. He's got 2 touchdowns. Like, he continues to be just that guy for you. And you can tell when he came back, there was a little bit different of a pace that you had with Dejon back there. He's more of a patient runner, kind of a, jump into the, hole, then get north and south. Not a, speed breaker that's going to break him away, but he's just been consistent for you, man. I think he does a really good job behind his offensive line, the way he runs. But his teammates love him. It's a reason why they trust him back there because he can do so many good things. But I'm not sure where we'd be right now if we didn't have number 30 back there rushing.
The guy cuts as well as I've ever seen. I mean, just one cut left, one cut right, and he'll do that in rapid succession. And boy, it's just fun to watch.
Positive yards is the Dejon Edwards deal. Every time I watch him, I mean, he is not a flashy guy. I don't know what he runs, but he looks like probably a 4'6" guy, something like that, just on the field. Not the fastest. He's not the biggest. He's not some daunting physical, specimen. But every time he gets the ball, he finds a hole and he goes 4 or 5 yards. And next thing you know, he does a jump cut and gains 15. So Dejon Edwards is probably, this point of the season, other than Carson Beck, he's probably the most important member of that offensive roster after Carson Beck, because the drop-off from him to the other guys as far as positive yards in the running game has been pretty drastic this year. He's been the best running back on the team by a long shot. So Dejon has been a guy that's been a huge difference maker for this Mike Bobo-led offense.
You know, we've gone all the way through this, and we haven't mentioned Brock Bowers' name one time. What was your thoughts on how we got things done offensively without one of the best players in the country last week?
I think you look at how they played. We both were gonna say the same thing. Brock is a different breed. He's a different dude. The dude, when he's on the field, he makes every team better, regardless of who they're playing against. But you look up and you got Ladd out there playing well. You got Marcus still being in the mix. You got Rara. You got Dom. And then, Oscar had one of the best catches you might have seen all year, the one-handed grab down the sideline. He's just as good, but because we had 19 for the last few years, everything else doesn't look as good because he's done it so well. But I think you just seen the versatility of so many guys on this offense that can make plays and get it done. And not having 19 on the field, you still put up over 400 or 500 yards. Carson got another 300-yard passing game, and your offense put up another big day of 43 points. Tell me that you don't have all the playmakers you need when you look around and see this Georgia offense going up and down the field. So it was fun to see other dudes step up. I know other guys relish that opportunity to go get it. But yeah, you still miss 19, but it's so good you recruited well enough where I got some other dudes that can play.
100% correct. And I hate it for Brock Bowers. I hate that he's out because he was going to go to New York for the Heisman ceremony this year with the pace he was going. Maybe it's because there's a weak quarterback class this year, so it seems to be. But he was playing that well, so I hate it for him. For this Georgia team, if they can come down this gauntlet undefeated to the SEC and figure out a way to run this offense without Brock in there, when he comes back, it's going to be a positive for this team because right now Carson Beck has to figure it out, right? He's got to figure out what defenses are out there. He's got to know where his receivers are breaking. He's got to get comfortable with other guys who are lining up all over the place, knowing that he can trust them running their routes, trust them to catch the ball, trust them to get a first down for him. Things that Brock Bowers was his guy with. So if he can get to the point where he can fully trust Ladd, fully trust Rara, fully trust Marcus, give Dejon the ball and know that this offense can execute. When Brock comes back and you plug him back in to a machine that will be running, if we're undefeated, this machine is running really well for the rest of the year. Because don't get me wrong, guys, I'm as big of a Georgia fan as anybody. It's going to be hard to win these next 4 games in a row. It's just hard to do it. It's hard to go undefeated. But if they can somehow figure it out and then get Brock back for the postseason, man, you got something special working.
All right, I want to get your final word on Week 9. Georgia's 8-0 going into this game with Missouri. Final word on how the Dogs get to 9-0, guys.
I think number one at home, you got to start fast. And I say start fast, you got to go get 6, not 3. Put pressure on their offense right away in this ball game because give them no leeway. Crowd's going to be into it. We're going to be rocking. Dogs haven't been home in a while, so everybody's going to be pumped up, ready to go primetime for. So you start fast, take care of the football, and then not give up those big plays that we have seen to give it up here and there. I think it forces Missouri to be in a long ball game, and they cannot make the mistakes, especially on the road. So I think starting fast is the key, and playing top down on defense is going to be a big part of this game.
I'm in full dad mode after trick-or-treating last night with the kids, so we'll hit them with a dad joke this morning. You can't let them get cooking early and burden you with a deep hole that you got to climb out of as an offense.
Wow.
Burden?
So
burn in there? Okay.
Look, I think we talked about it earlier. Kirby likes to take something away on offense, and I don't think they're going to let Luther Burden beat him tomorrow. He's too talented, too good. So I think he's going to make Brady Cook and that crew figure out different ways to beat him. And if you can make him uncomfortable in the pocket, if you can put pressure, if we sack him 4 times and rush for 170 yards, the Dogs are 9-0.
Just let Dom cook. Let Dom cook versus his old team, Scott. Come on.
Let him cook.
You guys are full of puns today. I like the don't let Luther burden our defense, so that might work on Saturday.
You can use that. You can use that on the actual.
You're giving it away. You're giving it away. All
right, guys. Good stuff today. Always good to see you and hear from you. And it's Georgia and Missouri. That's not marquee stuff because it's Missouri and It's not a natural SEC rivalry, but this is a good team. This is a good Missouri team. What were they in the CFP 12, I think, something like
12,
that?
Yep.
Georgia's 2. So it's a good matchup, and it's a path to the SEC championship. And Georgia's going to try to take one more step forward on Saturday. 3:40 is the kick. 11:30 is the start for the broadcast on the Bulldog Sports Network. So there you go, and we'll see you at Sanford Stadium. Guys, thanks a lot. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.